Okay, we are unpacking a truly wild story today. We're looking at the journey of a man named Ghazi Rakayat. Now, you might know him as a highly celebrated 28-time National Film Award-winning director, but before all of that, he was a brilliantly analytical engineer. This explainer maps out exactly how a strictly logical mind, someone trained in hard data and complex physics, experienced a totally profound transformation. And it wasn't through blind belief, but through intense mathematics and celestial science.
Okay, let's dive right into this. The entire premise of our explainer is actually summed up perfectly by Rakayat himself. He said, "I was mesmerized by the beauty of the Quran while trying to catch its scientific errors." He wasn't out looking for faith, He was actually on a mission to completely debunk it. But as you'll see, that deep engineering background led him to find something mathematically extraordinary instead.
Section 1. Lost Faith, an Engineer's Journey. So Rakayat was a top-tier engineering student at BUT, which is a massively prestigious institution. The guy basically breathed numbers and logic. But tragically, his life took a really dark turn with the death of his young nephew from a brain tumor. That trauma, combined with a really deep dive into theoretical physics, like reading a lot of Stephen Hawking, pushed him away from his religious upbringing. He embraced complete atheism. He felt like, hey, relying on science and data is literally the only logical path. Eventually, armed with the translated text of the Quran, he decided to read it, but get this, with one highly specific goal: to find the scientific errors and disprove the whole thing once and for all.
Now, what's really interesting here is the mindset shift, right? What actually happens when a highly analytical, evidence-based engineer deliberately goes hunting for a flaw? He doesn't just skim the words, he actively dissects the structure, the data points, and the physical descriptions of the universe.
Section 2. Celestial Science, Astronomical Parallels.
Look at this incredible comparison. Rakayat vividly remembers this one time he was acting in a play, and he confidently stated that the sun doesn't have an orbit, only the Earth does. To him, a stationary sun was just absolute scientific fact. But when he dug into modern astronomy, he learned that the Hubble telescope proved the sun actually does move in its own massive orbit within our galaxy. Then he reads Surah Al-Anbiya, a text from literally 1400 years ago, which explicitly states that both the sun and the moon float in their own distinct orbits. For Rakayat, the modern astronomical data was perfectly matching ancient text. No way, right?
And the astronomical parallels absolutely did not stop there. As he kept reading, he stumbled onto precise descriptions of what we now call the Big Bang. The heavens and earth being joined together before being separated. He read about the Big Crunch theory, which was described as the heavens rolling up like a written scroll. He even found references to an impassable barrier between sweet and salty ocean waters. That's a real phenomenon involving water density membranes that oceanographers only just discovered in modern times. To an engineer, these aren't just poetic metaphors, they are highly specific scientific data points.
Section 3. The Iron Miracle, Elemental Discoveries.
Okay, to really wrap our heads around this next part, we need to quickly define something called the Abjad value. Basically, it's this historical system where every single one of the 28 letters in the Arabic alphabet is assigned a specific fixed numerical value. So this means that any given word in the text can be mathematically calculated just by adding up the value of its letters. Keep this in your back pocket because it's completely vital to the data Rakayat uncovered.
And this brilliantly illustrates the mind-blowing correlation he found. So the Arabic word for iron is hadid. If you calculate its Abjad numerical value, you get exactly 26. Well, in modern chemistry, the atomic number of iron, the literal number of protons in its nucleus, is exactly 26. But wait, it goes further. The chapter titled Al-Hadid is the 57th chapter of the book. In chemistry, iron has 4 stable isotopes, and if you average their mass numbers, it rounds perfectly to 57. The textual data from centuries ago and our modern chemical data are identical.
There's also this wild physical structural parallel, too. The text has exactly 114 chapters. Chapter 57, Iron, sits precisely in the physical center of the book. Rakayat realized this perfectly mirrors our own planet. Solid molten iron sits squarely at the absolute core of the Earth. How in the world could an author 1400 years ago structure a book to mirror the atomic weight and the planetary position of an element?
Section 4. The Golden Ratio Mystery, Mathematical Precision.
1.618. This is the golden ratio. It's a deeply complex mathematical phenomenon found everywhere, throughout nature, architecture, the entire universe, really. What is absolutely crucial to remember here is that the mathematical concept of zero hadn't even been fully developed or integrated into the Middle East when this ancient text was spoken. Complex decimal mathematics basically didn't exist. Yet,
Rakiet managed to map out this precise ratio perfectly encoded within the book's framework.
So here is the exact step-by-step mathematical procedure he investigated. First, you list all 114 chapter numbers. Next to each of those, you write down the total number of verses contained in that specific chapter. Finally, you just add those two numbers together, the chapter number plus its verse count. This leaves you with a brand new set of 114 numbers. Stay with me here. So the crucial point is what happens next. Out of those 114 new numbers you just generated, exactly 57 of them are even, and 57 of them are odd. If you sum all 57 even numbers together, you get 6,236. Why does that matter? Because 6,236 is the exact total number of verses in the entire text. For Rakiet, this meant the structural mathematics perfectly verified its own contents. It's like a giant, self-locking puzzle.
Let's move on and see how this builds into an even more impossible calculation. You take that exact same list of 114 numbers, but this time you group them based on whether they are repeated numbers or unrepeated numbers in the sequence. Then you sum all the repeated values together and you sum all the unrepeated values together. Rakiet Goet literally spent 15 straight days manually mapping this all out, and he said it actually made him physically ill from the sheer impossibility of what he found.
Here is the absolute climax of his investigation. The sum of the repeated numbers equals 7,906. The sum of the unrepeated numbers equals 4,805. If you take 7,906 and you divide it by 4,805, the result is precisely 1.618, the golden ratio. To an engineer like Rakiet, organizing a book so flawlessly is just an architectural impossibility for a human being.
Section 5, The Missing One, a philosophical shift. After diving so incredibly deep into this heavy math, Rakiet's perspective totally shifted. He started describing life kind of like a giant game of snakes and ladders, where humanity is constantly trying to reach a perfect 100. He realized that, as an intellectual, as a scientist, you can push yourself to a 99. But human endeavor, our effort, our knowledge, it's always going to hit a wall at 99. You can never reach that final perfect score on your own. He realized that the missing one is divine completeness. It's the creator. And only by adding that final one can a person find true peace and actually reach 100. You see, his journey from a grieving atheist to a deeply convicted believer wasn't driven by just blind faith. It was driven by an absolute overload of undeniable structural data. He even puts an open invitation out there. I challenge the world's greatest mathematicians. Come to me and tell me how a human could mathematically structure this text so perfectly. He is absolutely certain, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that no human mind, especially 1,400 years ago without basic decimal mathematics, could have ever engineered this.
And that leaves us with an incredibly profound question to wrap up this explainer. If a text from 1,400 years ago contains scientific facts we've only discovered recently, and structural math way too complex for a human to consciously map out even today, who really authored it? It's a question that completely challenges the boundaries of history, science, and faith. Thank you so much for joining me on this incredible journey through the data today. I really hope this sparked your curiosity to go out and learn more.